Sandwich bread. There's something mildly unsettling and yet strangely satisfying about those perfectly square loaves you get at the supermarket. Well, in this video I'm going to show you the secret to making them. Hi everyone, it's Tash and welcome to another recipe video. And today I'm going to show you how to make those perfectly square loaves using this thing. Apparently the official name for it is called a Pullman tin, I think. And all it is a loaf tin with a lid. This one also has some ventilation holes in the bottom. Apparently helps it crisp up a bit more evenly. And probably quite obviously, when the dough rises in the tin and bakes, it forces itself into all the corners and makes a very, very satisfying, if slightly freaky, square shape. This one is a 450 gram tin, so I'm going to show you a recipe that fits that. And give you a few tips and tricks to making the perfect shaped loaf, because actually I ended up baking this twice to get it right. Technically it was 3 times because the first time it turned out that my yeast was dead and I found out too late. I used instant yeast in this recipe, and unfortunately the only way you can tell that the yeast is dead if you don't test it first is when it comes to the proofing part. So I had to chuck out my old yeast, which was still in date by the way, so I'm a bit annoyed about that. Go outside, buy more yeast and then do the whole thing all over again. The second time it overflowed a bit too much because I used a little too much yeast and it actually came out of the sides of the tin, so it was actually spilling out of the sides. It was quite cool really, I wish I'd filmed it. It forms a sort of ribbony curtain. And the bread loaf was good, it was delicious, great texture, but I wanted to avoid that awkward overspill. And the third time was just right. I'm going to be using my tangzhong milk bread recipe for this one, which I have made a couple of years before, although it was one of those split up recipes, so this time I'll show you a bit more in depth how to make that. And although it's technically not the traditional plain white loaf that you would bake in this, it still works pretty well. So without further ado, let's go to the kitchen and see how it's done. We're going to start by making the tangzhong part of our tangzhong bread, which is basically a roux. Well, technically a roux is butter mixed with flour and then it's cooked and it forms a paste. Instead of butter, we're using milk, so we're going to be cooking flour with milk. So here is 25 grams of bread flour, that's strong flour. And I'm going to gradually add in 100 millilitres of milk. Just slowly stir it in. I haven't turned the heat on yet, by the way. There we go, don't worry too much about lumps at this point. Now we're going to turn the heat on to about medium heat. And we're going to keep stirring this until it forms a really thick paste. Right, that is basically done. Let's turn the heat off. You can see how thick and goopy and almost sticky it is. Now we're going to transfer it onto a plate. I've got my plates all ready here. I'm just going to scoop it straight on. Get that all in. And we're going to cover it with some cling film to stop it from forming a skin. I'm also going to smush it down to let it cool down a little bit faster because we've got a thinner surface area there. There. Now we need to let this cool down completely. I've actually made this the night before I want to make the bread because it can handle being at room temperature overnight. It'll be absolutely fine. So if you don't want to do the whole process in one go, then just make the tangzhong the night before. Right, I'm going to let this cool down and I'm going to go to sleep. Good night. Now let's make our bread. We have 350 grams of white bread flour, 75 grams of caster sugar, half a teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of instant or easy bake yeast. We've got 30 grams of unsalted butter which has been softened at room temperature, 1 egg, 100 millilitres of whole milk, 25 millilitres of double cream, and last but not least our tangzhong, which is now completely cool. Now we're going to mix everything together, and when it comes together to form a dough, we're going to knead it to within an inch of its life until it's really smooth, not sticky anymore, and fights you back. Now my tangzhong was actually quite loose, so I didn't cook it quite enough as I should have, but it was still okay. But of course this resulted in a very sticky dough. If that happens, don't worry, just keep kneading. This took me 15 minutes. until it fully forms that nice smooth dough. So at the moment it looks like an utter mess, almost liquid, but don't worry, it will come together. If you have a stand mixer or a hand mixer with dough hooks, please use them because it'll make your life so much easier. I'm actually going to invest in one soon so I don't have to do this anymore. This made my arms so tired. Anyway, I'm going to get a good hand mixer with dough hooks because I don't have enough space for a stand mixer. And now we have a nice and smooth dough. And here I have a bowl which I very lightly oiled so this won't stick. I'm going to pop this into our oiled bowl and I'm going to cover it with cling film. Now I'm going to let her rest and rise until she's doubled in size, which could be probably up to 2 hours because it's cold in here. May only take you 1 hour or even less time if it's warmer in your apartment or house or wherever you are. It's quite cold here though, so I'm probably going to give this 2 hours, we'll see. Wow, look at that! What a difference 2 hours makes. So, let's peel this out, peel this off, and my favourite part, we're going to punch it down. Squish it right down. Now things are going to get a little bit oily. We've got our Pullman tin here. Let's get that lid off. You can already see I put a little bit of oil in there because I kept the paper that I used to oil the bowl. So oil it well, might need a bit more. Also don't forget to oil the lid because the bread is going to go right up to the top. Let's get that lid first. Spread it all around. Get to the corners and spread it inside as well. Nicely done. Let's just set this aside. I'm also going to oil our work surface as well because we don't want our bread sticking to our work surface. Let's get our bread out of there. And what we're going to do is we're going to shape it into a rough, squarey, circly type thing. Doesn't really matter. We're going to fold it up into thirds like this. Very rough like. Flatten out a bit more. Doesn't matter if you tear it, don't worry. And we're going to roll it up into another sausage, just like this. Give her a bit of a roll. We want to shape it sort of the length of our tin, like this. Give that bottom bit a pinch, although it doesn't really matter. Just make sure that you put it seam side down. It's all going to smush out anyway. And we're going to put this straight in the tin, just like this. And we're going to pop this lid on. And we're going to let this rise until it touches the top of the tin. So when we pull it back, there'll be a bit of resistance. So usually the second proof lasts a bit shorter of a time than the first one. So I'll say half an hour to an hour. Future Tash voice over here. I actually found a better way to do this, and that is instead of to put the lid on, you cover the top with cling film so you can actually see how high the bread is going. And then when the bread just nearly reaches the top of the tin, which you'll see my second attempt here, then you put the lid on and then you bake it from here, and that will actually stop extra stuff from spilling out, which you'll see happens to me when I bake that first one. Anyway, both methods work. While we're waiting for our dough to proof, let's preheat our oven to 180 degrees C. Now we've got a proof dough here, and I won't be able to show you because, as you can see, the lid is a little bit sticking to the top, which means that the bread dough has risen to touch the top, so it is now ready to bake in our preheated oven, and we're going to bake this for 45 minutes. It's been 45 minutes and we did have a little bit of an overflow which was oozing out of the side here, but that is okay, there wasn't that much. Might make the lid a little tricky to come off though if it's a bit stuck. Ooh, just a little bit. Oh, nice. I'm going to turn this straight out now. And that is a beautiful loaf. Ooh, hot, hot, hot. Right, I'm going to let that cool down completely now, and then I'm going to slice it. That sounds all baked to me. Right, let's let this cool down. And here we have our finished loaf. Absolutely beautiful. And I did trim off some of the overhang as well, just to make it a bit neater. So let's slice her up. Typical that the first slice is an air bubble, but you get the general idea. And it is so squishy too. Tell you what, for sanity's sake, let's cut another slice. Ah yeah, there we go. Let's give her a little squeeze. Nice. And here's the one I proofed with cling film instead of the lid, so I could see that it was nearly at the top and then baked just before it reached the top. This is absolutely gorgeous. The perfect square loaf, and you can even see that little swirl we did when we rolled the dough up. That's so cute. And it is perfectly spongy too. And I'm going to give you a few gratuitous slow-mos just so you can see how soft and lovely and fluffy that bread is. Absolutely delicious. Best with a little bit of butter, especially lightly salted butter. Got to admit, I lost willpower, and when I tore the bread apart for my slow-mo, I just ate some of it straight away because it's so soft and it smells so good. Obviously with the milk, the cream and egg in it and the sugar, it is an enriched bread, which makes it all the more delicious. Bit sweet, bit creamy, very fluffy and soft. And I've got a little salted butter on there as well. I do like the juxtaposition of the salt against the sweet. Delicious. The smell's tempting me again, so I'm going to take another bite. Cheers. That's some good bread. I don't have to wax lyrical much more about the texture and the flavour, I've already done that. This is a really, really good loaf, especially if you like a little bit of sweetness in your bread, and if you like your bread super fluffy and soft. You can use this bread for sandwiches as well, it's not too sweet. And it toasts amazingly well as well. The middle stays really fluffy and soft, whilst the outside's really crisp. And probably when it goes a bit stale, it'll be great for French toast too, although I do not think this bread is going to have a chance to go stale because it's so delicious, and I think Mr. Tash Cakes and I will be eating it within 2 days. So now you know how to make square bread, or technically rectangular. If you want to make an actual cube square of bread, you can actually get loaf tins like that. So it's similar to this one, only obviously it's about half the length and it is just a cube. But then you only have a cube of bread and not a whole loaf, so it depends on how much bread you want in your life. In my case, the more bread the better. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I hope you will join me next Wednesday for my next one. Get the full written recipe on my blog tashcakes.com, follow me on Instagram, I am tashcakes.tastes, and you can find me on TikTok too, I am food in slow motion, and also Tash Cakes. Subscribe and hit the notification bell if you'd like to see more. Give this video a like if you'd like to help other people find it. Comment down below if you'd like me to make anything in particular, and I'll see you guys next time. Be good, be nice, and have a good week. I don't know if anyone notices or cares, probably not, but I care, so I'm going to show you why. I've had the same flowers for a few weeks. It's because my roses are growing. I have 2 stems, one still got the flower, one I chopped off, and for some reason they're growing leaves and they look really strong, and apparently if I leave them in clean water for long enough and keep changing the water, they will start to root. So we'll see how that goes.